Welcome to the Neijiaquan Podcast. This is episode 4. This one we get a little bit into the technical stuff about spine alignments and standing. Just to give you a sense of where this is going, we're going to go through the rest of Bruce's book. Then we'll move on to other books, all around the same topics, probably some martial arts stuff. I may even do some special episodes, if you will, on some of these old Shingi manuscripts I've been studying, so stay tuned. If you're listening to this when I put it out, which would be February 5th, 2020, this weekend I'll be teaching standing and energy gates. If you're interested, you can find links in the description. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast and feel like giving us a positive rating on iTunes or Google or wherever you happen to be listening to this, we'd really appreciate it. Thanks, and on to the episode.
So we left off talking about the opening the energy gate set and about standing Qigong, which is the beginning of the set and in a way the most fundamental and important part of the training. And we talked a little bit about an article talking about one of Kumar's teachers in Japan, Neijiaquan, and the standing they used to do there. So returning back to the Opening the Energy Gates of Your Body book, we were currently looking at page 50 here, placement of the chest. Gently allow your chest to sink as it rounds. So this section talks about something that Kumar teaches in his class a lot. Han Xiong Ba Bei, he says. And it says here it's translated as round the chest and raise the spine. This is a fundamental technique found in all Taoist meditation, martial arts, and Qigong practices regardless of school. So everybody's got Han Xiong Ba Bei. So it means to have a half chest or chest like an hourglass, rounded on both the vertical and horizontal planes. So this is something I think could easily get misunderstood by people when you're practicing and you maybe mistake slumping for rounding something or slouching as, instead of actually moving your body in a, sense of holding it in a correct place rather than just sort of slouching into it. So he describes it as the posture of a baby. The chest is relaxed, the shoulders are relaxed downward, and the belly is rounded. He contrasts that with the military pose where the chest is thrown out and the stomach in and the shoulders pushed back. So I think this is something that comes up in standing a lot when you're getting going, finding a comfortable place for your shoulders, your hips, your legs, your back. That seems to be the first step. But then what do you do to get going on Han Xiong Ba Bei?
Well, the first exercise Bruce always talks about is the sense of having, something like holding you from above and you're dropping your tailbone like a marionette or something, And so that feeling of rather than pulling up to straighten your body, just letting it relax. And so I think where it's a little misleading in a sense is it's like the raising your spine starts at the bottom of your spine. So it's that sense of like lifting up all the way from the bottom of your spine to the top of your head, and then dropping all the way from the top of your head down to to your tailbone again, and creating that sort of springy like a snake or it's got some spring to it. So the raising the head, we talked about this last time, but it's the dropping that causes the raising, so that the rounding of the back, in a sense, allows you to have that space to drop.
So it starts round the chest is the first thing it says.
Right, so as you open up your shoulder blades, that creates this rounding in the front. But you're not like slump, like you said, you don't want to slump.
So it's key to get the upward lift of the spine, and from there, you let the shoulders round.
Yeah, so, that's the primary, right? The sense of being upright. I think that's what keeps your body, takes the pressure off your knees and, makes it so that you're not like hunkering. It makes it different from like doing a classic, like horse stance or something where you're squatting down real low, and it's more about just getting down in it as opposed to relaxing.
So it's a taller stance where you can balance with less muscular effort.
Yeah.
For one thing.
I mean, that's I think what the alignments are really, that's what they give you. You know, is the ability to hold yourself up without muscular tension. And so that you know, I mean, if you want to get a little more esoteric, it's about gravity, right? You're learning how to both fight gravity, which is to stay upright, and go with gravity, which is to drop, right? So part of your body is holding you up, and part of your body is allowing that force to move down through you.
And so how does rounding the shoulders fit into that?
It creates space.
And how do you physically round the shoulders?
Well, you start by just trying to get the space between your spine and your shoulder blades to increase.
So you like push out your elbows sideways to help increase that space?
You can do it that way. It's better if you kind of just get the sense of moving the stuff in your back. You know, so, sort of think of it in terms of you want to move it from the spine out towards the fingertips rather than from the fingertips to try to pull the spine. So you're not pulling your hand to get your shoulder to come out. You're stretching the stuff in your mid-back and between your shoulder blades to move your hands forward. So the simple thing is that you're pulling from your armpit, like so your elbow pulls out from your armpit, so you get that sense of like stretching it out from in there rather than pushing your shoulder forward.
So maybe your elbow dragging out from the shoulder socket to open it up a little bit.
Yeah, like the one we used to do in the Shin class is pulling yourself along the floor from your elbows.
So arm drags on the floor.
Right, because you get that sense of your elbow being able to really connect to your body.
The upper arm, some people will say, is the piece that needs to draw open the shoulder.
Right. So there's a certain amount that you keep that open like all the time, and then it can close a little bit and open a little bit from there. But getting that sort of initial...
So there's a baseline of openness from which you open and close.
Essentially, the thing is like you have to open it a little bit to get to neutral. If it's
so from impacted to neutral.
Right. And then once it's in neutral, you have a little bit of open and a little bit of close. And so when you're standing, you know, in the basic standing posture, you're just in that neutral position. When you start doing cloud hands or something, you're moving from neutral to forward to back to neutral to forward to, you know.
So when someone's taking that initial stance and they're standing in a relaxed, upright posture and their body's stretched up and down, then they let go of their shoulders. What would you physically see happen as that person was relaxing their rounding their chest by relaxing their shoulders?
What would you see happen?
Would their body
mostly
sink a little bit?
Yeah, it can. It depends on. I think part of it depends on how tense they are to begin with. You know, if somebody's fairly loose, when there isn't going to be a dramatic change. If somebody's shoulders are up by their ears, you know, when you get them to drop their shoulders, it's going to be fairly dramatic. But the main thing is just to get the size isn't the issue. It's more that they get the separation between moving your shoulders and moving your spine, right? So the whole thing with the Hong Sheng Babe is that's keeping this up and down thing to keep your spine straight. So that when you start moving your shoulders, you're not pulling yourself left or right or forward or back.
So I get, we're trying to be on guard against distorting your posture in the process of opening and relaxing different joints. If it's dragging you off to one side or the other, that's a sign that you're overdoing it. So you bounce back to that tall posture, relaxing the lower back and letting the top of the spine rise. And so layering on top of that is this idea of rounding the shoulders, relaxing inside the shoulders. I mean, one thing that you always talk about in the classes we've done is the shoulder's nest, that sort of socket inside your shoulder.
Well, it's not just your shoulders; it's also you're rounding the whole back, and so I think getting the lower part of like where you round your hips to round also is a big piece of it. So you start with the shoulders because they're more accessible, but the simplest way to think of it is you don't want any the phrase from the Tai Chi Classics is no hollows and no protuberances. That, you don't want the lower back to be bunched up. You don't want the middle back to be sticking out. You don't want the space between the shoulder blades to be hunched over, because that's going to cause a collapsing in the front and a pushing out in the back. So more or less, if you just look at the body from the side, if it's looks like a column, a straight column, then that's what you're looking for. If it's too much in any one direction, it will distort that thing, and you'll start to get that sort of S curve in the spine. So a good exercise is just, if you have something you can put against your back, you can just sort of get the sense that your shoulders and your lower back are on the same line, like you were leaning up against a wall or something.
So you're not tilting forward or back.
Yeah, and that your spine isn't making that sort of S curve. I think the big thing that the rounding the shoulders does is it takes out a lot of the slack in your upper back and in your neck. And then the dropping of your tailbone takes out the slack in your lower back, or mid-back, lower back. And that creates that sort of stretch in your spine, which is that's that neutral position. So you're not trying to stretch yourself out really, or bend yourself a whole bunch. You're just trying to find that middle Goldilocks point where everything is linked up. So the goal of the standing is to get everything linked to that center, the Zhongding, and then once you have the
central channel. Yeah,
the central channel, or the central equilibrium, if you want to use the Tai Chi language, and then that's your frame of reference for everything. So if you start to move off of that line, you'll feel it. You'll feel yourself leaning or losing your balance or something.
You want to do that deliberately maybe at times, but you don't want it to be like a bad habit or whatever, where you're always sort of distorting yourself.
Well, you don't do it when you're doing cloud hands, let's put it that way, or energy gates. I mean, you might do that in other things, but in this method of doing energy gates, you want your spine to be as close to being vertical as much as possible. So any leaning you do is only to alleviate pressure in your lower spine or something, but
that makes sense.
That it's the barber pole thing about it's all done where all of the turning is done in sort of inside. So where you just that sense of not even shifting and turning, but just getting the smallest imperceptible little bit of your insides to turn before you engage the thing that turns the outside. So that center line that you can feel starts to have the ability to rotate. And so standing is like where you connect to it, and then you start moving, and that's kind of like exercising it or whatever.
So you're bringing your awareness deeper in.
Right, and so
finding that central core.
So the lifting and dropping bit is to keep your physical structure from compressing that center line or distorting that center line. So if you're leaning to one side or you're leaning forward or back, your perception of what is your center line is not going to be clear. Where when you're standing upright, you have a better chance, at least, of feeling where that line where everything connects is. And it's not like a perfect exact thing. It's different in every person, in everybody's body. So it's really more about just feeling when you feel your head and your spine and your leg and your foot all connect.
That makes sense.
The Goldilocks point, as Bruce would say.
And I think, from the stuff we've done, standing is where a lot of that takes place, that unification.
Yeah.
That connection to the core that runs through your central, line, your center line, your central channel, whatever you want to call it. That's where your movement is going to spring from. And that's where everyone's movement springs from ultimately, but the more conscious you can become, the more you can harness that.
Yeah, and then the
more effective you can be.
Better, quote unquote, you get at it. It's like, you go deeper in. So it's like you work less and get more benefit because you're more tapped into it. So it takes you less effort to connect to it, and then the benefits you get from it are, just as big. So it's like
more efficient in that sense, maybe.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of the standing. One of the things that I've felt is my shoulders relax and my body, my shoulders drag away from my spine slightly. That's when you also allow your hands to turn with the palms facing backward. How do you feel about how that relates with letting the shoulders release? It seems to connect.
I don't emphasize that one that much in the beginning. I don't think it matters so much if your hands are facing your hip or facing back.
But kind of helps your shoulders come out.
Right. It's a mechanism for slightly opening up your shoulders. I think the bigger thing is that you can get that sense of like almost a wave going down your body, so that as you drop, your chest and your belly, and you lift your spine and your head, there's this kind of wave that is a result of that, and that pushes out your arms. So there's it's pung in Tai Chi. It's that ward-off energy where you're, by dropping and filling up, something comes up and out of you. And you're not letting it move your hands yet, but there's a certain sort of buoyancy that you get between your shoulder blades and between your hips.
Okay, because the book goes on to talk more about that. He's saying that you don't collapse your chest because that'll compress the lungs. Rather, you relax the chest so that the inside edge of the shoulders, all the way through the belly to the hips, there's a sense of sinking, dropping, and opening downward. That's that wave you're talking about that flows down when you relax your shoulders.
And before you can feel a, quote unquote, energetic wave, if you just sort of let your body do a little bit, you can at least get a sense of it, like because first it just sort of feels like chunks of your body. So you feel your head, your shoulders, your chest, your belly, and if you can relax your shoulders and then relax your chest and then relax your belly and then relax your hips and then relax your legs, you're not doing a wave yet, but you're going in the right sequence. And then eventually those things, you don't do them one at a time. It's like it goes from one to the other, to the other, to the other. Again, I go back, the name, right? Energy gates. It's more like gates in a dam or gates in a...
Sluice gates.
Right. That's what Bruce would always the gates in like a canal, right?
Right.
So as one opens up, it allows, this whole flow to continue down. So at each gate, you're like clearing the path for the stuff that's going to come through it. So initially, it's just, can you feel something kind of moving along that path? This is what's often referred to as sung or relaxing, right? Just getting that sense of sinking inside your body versus squatting and dropping your physical frame, right? So there's a the two drops. There's the external dropping, which in standing is very little, and then there's this internal sense of just continuously letting everything drop. And that, Bruce emphasized less back then. He emphasized dissolving more. But, when we did, it was like early 90s, mid 90s, we did a bunch of Neijiaquan classes. And one of the things he emphasized was getting the sense of like your head, the energy in your head to just kind of drop into your belly without going through anything. And so it was more of just the sinking part of the dissolving, or the energy thing without the dissolving. It was just the general sense of everything going down. And so once you got that going, it was like then when you started to dissolve, there was a sort of heavier flow to pull everything along.
General sinking that aids in the dissolving.
Right. So it's like, if you think of it in terms of a waterfall, right? Like and there's a bunch of little rocks in the way, and those are what you're trying to get rid of. The more water you have going through that waterfall, it's just going to knock those rocks out of the way.
So this really connects with the next paragraph. The next paragraph starts by talking about the dantian, the area in the lower abdomen where qi is stored. The dantian is like a reservoir or bowl that by relaxing the chest downwards, the chi will drop from the upper body and collect in the lower dantian.
That's the bottom of the waterfall, right? That's the pool at the base of it. So it's like
So the mere act of letting it go causes it to fall and collect and stabilize in your lower body.
Right, and a lot of Tai Chi schools, for example, will just that's it. Their whole thing is just keep dropping everything into your belly, so that reservoir just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. The dissolving thing does that, but it also continues that, or I mean, Tai Chi does this too, but also continues to go through your legs. So it isn't just about developing the root in your belly. It's like about getting it to flow through your legs.
So in terms of energy gates, I mean, dantian is like the big energy gate in the system in some ways. When someone's just trying to learn how to do this, how do you conceptualize and experience a dantian or lower dantian? I guess.
Do. I mean, I think for most people, it's just you get them to feel something collecting in their belly. That so breathing helps because you're sort of filling up that area. Squatting helps because you get I think a lot of it has to do with just accessing that area in your body. So before there's any sense of a dantian or Mingmen or any of those, there's just the sense of, can you actually feel where things are in your, in that space between your belly button and your perineum, because for a lot of people that isn't the most aware thing. And so the dantian is just the the physical center of the body, right? So Bruce always talked about the John Belushi thing, where if you cut yourself in half one way and then half the other way and then half the other way, you're going to have you'll find this middle point, and that midpoint is where your all the lines in your everything goes through to your dantian.
So let's say your center of gravity.
Right. I mean, it's not really your center of gravity because you can actually shift your center of gravity, but it's the closest thing you have to a physical center between the top of your head and your foot, right? And so it's kind of and depending on how you're shaped, it's a little different,
right?
But everybody has. I mean, reservoir is really the best sense because there's not, it's not like there's a physical thing there that you're trying to move, but I think there's just a sense that as you allow yourself to relax, it goes and it just fills up your belly. And
so there's a heaviness in your lower belly where my experience is there's a heaviness. My legs feel like a little more firmly attached, but still springy. My body feels like I'm kind of grounded and centered in my belly, in my lower belly. It's just, there's this feeling of, I guess groundedness is the best word I can say.
Yeah. I mean, I frequently describe it as you're going from water to mud, right? Where things, instead of feeling very loose and viscous, there's things that have there's a bit more like squish to it, and things are.
But I feel like once I got a better sense of it, my movements carried a little more heaviness to them. There was a little more connection.
Heaviness is a common, sensation.
Connectedness.
Magnetic, like pulling is a big sensation. Like you'll feel like that when you move your arms, it pulls on your body a little bit more. That's a big one when you get through your shoulder.
Because when I feel like if my energy's imbalanced, like I'm up in my head and I've been reading a lot on my computer, or I'm like, haven't been doing physical practices, I'll feel a little top heavy and wobbly from above. When I've been doing some training and syncing that opening up my shoulders and allowing the syncing to take place, I feel like all my movements have a little more authority, a little more firmness, a little more connectedness. Like I'm less likely to stumble or to not see something. Like I feel like I'm just dropped into myself.
And most people would just describe that as feeling quote unquote centered, right? Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things that we use it as a sort of a expression, but it actually comes from that you're connecting to your center, right? And so, being grounded is a state of mind, if you will, but it also is about connecting to the ground. And
literally.
So the whole bit with dropping your tailbone is connects you to the ground in a physical sense, which then, if you will, energetically grounds. So there's, there really isn't a separation between, what you do with your physical body and what you do with your energy body. They always affect each other. It's just how much, right? And so the practice is about getting the physical to affect the energetic, if you will, equally to the, that the interchange back and forth is smooth, where most of the time it's might be mostly in one direction and, not in the other, or weak in both directions. And so you're just establishing that, that link between your physical body and what you're feeling inside your physical body.
So when you're standing like that and you're releasing your shoulders and letting everything that's sort of in your head and chest sink down into your belly.
That's the physical part.
That's the physical part.
Right.
What's the energetic part?
Well, that would be feeling, if you will, the dissolving, feeling something happening inside of that you can just sort of let yourself drop, and gravity will pull you down, right? You will sink. But then there's also the ability to, within that sinking, kind of relax things and let things go, which then allows them to be pulled further down, or I don't know if it's further down or just easier down, but that you release without having to work as hard, because it's this chicken and egg thing, the relaxing makes it easier to feel, the feeling makes it easier to relax. And so the more you access your ability to feel your body, i.e. dissolving or just standing and breathing, or whatever mechanism you use to increase your ability to feel, that then will increase your ability to relax. And, relax is a funny word, because I think a lot of people interpret it as meaning kind of limp, or squishy. And you can be physically hard as a rock and you can feel relaxed.
Sure.
You can be, there are acrobats and, people who do backflips and, handstands, and they're perfectly relaxed in what they're doing. Doesn't necessarily mean their body is soft, right? And so those two things kind of get mushed together. So being relaxed is the goal of your mind, in a sense. You want it to constantly be relaxed. But then there's also this thing of, what is it relaxing in? Is it relaxing in being soft? Is it relaxing in being hard? Is it relaxing in the change between the two? So Energy Gates is about particularly relaxing with that sense of dropping. Because spiraling, for example, is relaxing with the sense of it coming back up, right? So you need to kind of play with those two different feelings. And so I think standing and dropping is one skill, and then standing and dissolving is another skill that, they're very closely related, but they're different things. And so I think the dropping of the physical stuff, the lifting of the chest and the dropping of lifting the spine and dropping of the chest and dropping the belly, those give you a sense of it, so that you have something to connect your insides to until you can actually feel it, and then you can directly kind of activate it.
So in a way, I get the sense that there's instructions to follow and a list of things to do, and yet at the same time, you want it to be a very organic sense of your whole system connecting together without a bunch of breaks and bumps and rocks in the way, but a flow that's dropping through your whole system while you perform the exercises.
This is one of those, classic Taoist paradoxes where,
yin yang.
You're supposed to be, focused with all of your intent and have all of your body and everything engaged, and you're also supposed to be relaxed and comfortable.
Right.
And those two things don't...
You kind of go back and forth. You concentrate real hard, then you let go and sort of just let it happen for a while. Then you concentrate really hard, then you go back
and then eventually you
kind
kind of find that, place where they both, if you will, the Tai Chi, where they both exist. So you have this struggle for, a while to find the balance between the two. But then once you find it, that's, I think that's what that's when you're ready to move on to the next piece. Which I think brings us to the end of
No doubt.
this episode.
Good catching up with you.
All right, cheers.
Talk to you soon.
Hey, folks, this is Isaac again. Thanks for listening. That was episode 4. We'll be releasing episode 5 in a couple weeks. Until then, like and subscribe, and have a good one.